Hello, good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it may be for you. This will be our Bible study for Wednesday, March 15th, and we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, which says, "The sluggard will not plow by reason of cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest, and have nothing." A sluggard, simply put, is a lazy person, someone who's very slow to act on anything, including the most necessary of things. While we all may have days in which we feel a bit sluggish, we're talking about someone here for whom such is a state of being. It's the normal way they are. They just don't want to do anything. Our passage says that such a person will not plow by reason of cold. Plowing could be replaced by just about any necessary action, and the person would yet have an excuse not for doing that. If the subject is plowing and it's not cold, then such a person might, they might just be too tired, or it might be too bright out, or you name it. They're just going to have an excuse for not doing what needs to be done. That is what a sluggard is, somebody who always has an excuse for not doing what needs to be done. And his lack of action will at some point cause him some suffering. Again, our verse says, "The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest, and have nothing." When it comes harvest time and everyone else is harvesting their crops, well, the guy who wouldn't bring himself to plow and plant isn't going to have anything to harvest. Now, putting things off is never really a good practice, although we probably have all done it and are likely to do it one or two more times maybe. Recently, I've done it. We had a problem in the house with our water heater going out at least once a day, and it had to do with this new kind of electronic igniter on the unit. And we had a lot going on during this time, and by the end of the day, I just didn't feel like getting on the phone and calling a repairman and bothering with that. I was just too tired. And so whenever the problem crossed my mind, I didn't do anything about it. It took a couple of weeks for me to be motivated enough to do something, and in that time, the unit became increasingly difficult to restart, and it turned off more frequently. My point in sharing this is I could have avoided all of that irritation and all of that wasting of time if I had just pushed through my tiredness and called somebody to take care of it. Now, my problem was inconvenient, but it wasn't as detrimental as the problem of the sluggard in our verse. This is a person who finds an excuse not to plow, and therefore also not to plant, and when it comes harvest time, he has nothing. The fact that he wouldn't do the work that needed doing resulted in him begging, having nothing. He would find himself hungry at harvest time, and if he were going to eat, he would have to depend on the goodness of others in order to have any food. Now, many a person, for reasons beyond his control, has needed the help of others. And as believers in Jesus Christ, we should be willing to help when there's truly a need. James 2, starting in verse 15, says, "If a brother or sister be naked or destitute of food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, and be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit?" What good does it do just to tell somebody, "I hope you're warm and filled," and then close the door in their face? Now, in Luke chapter 6, Jesus said this. He said, "As ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise." So, if I were truly hungry, I would hope that someone would be willing to help me. Also, if I were truly in need of work so that I could buy my own food, I would also hope someone would help me. If I were in need of motivation, I hope someone would care enough to try to motivate me. Now, sometimes people do need help, and Christians should be willing to be helpful. But we are also called upon to be responsible. While we should be willing to give to those in need, we should also be willing to work. Some cannot work, and that is different. But the person who is able to work and chooses not to do so is going to be creating a problem for other people that need not be there. In 2 Thessalonians 3, Paul writes, "Even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any man would not work, neither should he eat. For we hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, not working at all, but are busybodies." Now, the word busybodies here is translated from a Greek word that literally means to work around. These people were working around work. They were actually putting effort into avoiding the actual work that needed to be done. They made an effort to avoid work. That seems kind of silly, but I have known many a person who has done that. According to what Paul writes to the Thessalonians, such a person who is able to work but unwilling might just find himself hungry at harvest time. The individual needs to be responsible. And if there is a need in one's family, the family should do its best to meet that need, especially before looking for help elsewhere. In 1 Timothy 5, Paul writes, saying, "If any provide not for his own, and specially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel." So, for someone who's just not willing to try to provide for his family, that's bringing shame upon the name of Christ. We need to remember, though, that sometimes people are willing to work and might work very hard and might still have a need, and that is different. We need to remember also that sometimes people are not able to work. Sometimes they are in need not because of laziness, but because of things that are simply beyond their control. Therefore, we should be willing to help out in such cases. Now, if a stranger asks you for money to buy food, you might be a little suspicious. You might wonder if the person is honestly hungry or if they're just trying to get some money from you. Well, I don't normally carry cash. I don't normally have cash. So if someone asks me for food saying they want to buy money, I tell them I don't have any money, but I'd be glad to bring you back a meal. And the thing is, if someone is truly hungry, then they are always glad for that offer, and I will follow through on that offer. On the other hand, if they are being deceptive, they are likely to turn down the offer for a meal and say, "I just want the money." In that case, I can honestly tell them, I don't have it to give. It's true that there are some people out there who might want to take advantage of you. And so you have to be wise. Jesus talked about people that were ready to take advantage of him. People who had seen him feed a multitude. And in John 6, he says to them, "You seek me, not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat of the loaves and were filled." They didn't come looking for Jesus because they wanted to hear more of his teaching. They didn't come to see him because they knew the miracles he did were evidence that he was the Messiah. They came to him because they wanted another free meal. And that is a shame. Now, we can't look into people's hearts. The best we can do is to act in good faith. We need to remember that ultimately God knows our hearts, and he knows the hearts of those who may be asking for help as well. Among Christian people, and especially among local churches, There should be honesty and integrity. If an individual or a family is truly in need, then there should also be compassion, and the church family should be ready to help those people. On the other hand, each person should be willing to do his best to meet his own daily needs and those of his family. If we do so, we will be much less likely to be an unnecessary burden to others. We live in a time when people often talk about their rights and their freedoms and what they deserve, but sometimes people tend to forget about this thing called responsibility. As God's people, as those who are thankful for what Jesus Christ has done for us, we should strive to honor our Lord by being compassionate, responsible, and wise. God bless you.